had to look around a lot for a good whiteboard, and this is about the best option I could find, is just showing a white image on my TV. But let's talk about HDR. HDR stands for High Dynamic Range, and we'll get into what that means in a bit. But first, we should talk about histograms. Histograms are graphs that show you the amount of pixels of each gradation of gray on the scale. So you have on the left is where the black is, on the right is where the white is, and in the middle is all the gray. And it'll show you a graph representation of how bright your image is overall. Ideally, you want that hump in the middle, right? If the hump is to the left, then your image will turn out really dark, and if the hump is on the right, then your image is too bright overall. But let's say that this line is a histogram. This line is a histogram of absolute brightness. Okay, so way over here you have the deepest, darkest cave, brightness and darkness, right? And then you have staring at the sun, bright. But this bracket here is basically the dynamic range of a single image that your camera can take, right? Everything to the right of that bracket will turn out as pure white. Everything to the left of that bracket will turn out as pure black, okay? By adjusting the ISO, the aperture, and the shutter speed, I can take that bracket and I can move it up and down the scale. If I leave the shutter open long enough, I can take a picture in the deepest, darkest cave, and if I put enough sunglasses on the camera, I can take a picture of the sun. But let's take a normal picture of, for instance, an outdoor picture of a building in direct sunlight. So you have the part of the building that is in direct sunlight, okay? You have another part of the building that is in shadow. And then, like, if you look through the windows of the building, you have the part of the inside of the building that you can see through the windows, okay? Now, if I expose for the part of the building in direct sunlight, this is all going to come out great, but the part in the shadow will just turn out as completely black, okay? And conversely, if I expose for the part in the shadow, everything in the direct sunlight will just show up as completely white. So what I do is I take the camera and I set it on a tripod, and I take overlapping exposures. I take multiple pictures of the exact same scene. It only works if you put it on a tripod. And I try to cover the entire dynamic range of that scene with multiple pictures. Then I bring those pictures into Photoshop. Your camera, when it takes a picture, it stores data with that image called EXIF data, E-X-I-F. And it basically contains all the model of the camera that did the shooting, and then all the settings of the camera. Okay, that's part of the EXIF. When you bring the pictures into Photoshop, Photoshop looks at the EXIF data, it stacks all the pictures on top of each other, and since it knows the EXIF data, it picks out the best parts of each image to get a better overall representation, so that in the same picture, I can have a properly exposed shadow, properly exposed direct sunlight, and maybe, if I'm lucky, I might even be able to properly expose the part inside the building. But that's HDR. There is a genius of a guy named Trey Ratcliffe. He's been playing around with HDR, actually more than playing. He is the accepted, guru of it. Trey Ratcliffe is from New Zealand. He's traveled all around the world taking some very high quality HDR stuff, and I could only hope to one day do half of what he does. He's an amazing photographer and brilliant stuff. He has a whole bunch of pictures for free download on his website. It's called stuckincustoms.com. It's really nice. Highly recommend it. All of my computer desktop backgrounds are from Trey Ratcliffe's site. Anyways, he put out a book called, talking about HDR, and I've played around with HDR somewhat. There's times when you're taking a picture, like say you're inside a building and you're shooting an image out through the front door. So you have the part of the building that is indoors, and then you have the part of the building that is outdoors, and it's very difficult to get both exposures right. And that's the beauty of HDR, is it allows you to do that. Another thing is that if I'm not too sure about a scene in general, I can just do an HDR photography. I can take 4 different images of the place, and then I can go back and later I can combine them all together, and then I can just pick out I can basically choose my exposure after the fact, trying to get the best possible combination. And that's basically HDR.